Welcome back. The road to the modern day etches on as we've landed in the 2010s. The decade most recent as of my writing and recording this. So, what label do we give this era? The 70s was a golden age, 2000s was a dark age. What do we have here? Let's call it the... I guess I don't have a name for it just yet. How about we wait all the way until the end of this documentary and then I'll name it. The 2000s was a less than fond time for boxing's marquee division, helmed by the Klitsch Bros, who themselves should not be looked down upon. Both Wladimir and Vitali are all-time greats and should be primed to remind us as to why here in the 2010s. At the end of the 2000s, there were some names who emerged on the scene who will be prominent. I can't wait to tell you all about them, and I'm sure you can guess a few. Lock in and enjoy this journey into the 2010s. A revival of sorts, but a heavyweight division. It's been 9 months since Wladimir Klitschko fulfilled his destiny and became the face of the heavyweight division. Now, can he maintain that standing in a new decade? Well, let's find out. His first challenge of the 2010s came in the form of Eddie Chambers. The previous July, Chambers, who was on a 4-fight win streak since losing to Alexander Povetkin, won a WBO title eliminator to earn this opportunity. It was a 4.5-1 underdog, and we found out why, as Klitschko dominated the fight en route to a knockout in the 12th and final round. With just 5 seconds to go, it would be the only stoppage loss in Fast Eddie's career. The Giant Slayer, the Haymaker, is back. His first defense is against former WBA title holder John Ruiz. Hay had his way with Ruiz, dropping him 4 times before the stoppage in the 9th. Ruiz was down twice in the 1st, once in the 5th, and once in the 6th. It was only the 2nd time Ruiz was stopped in his career, the last being against David Tua back in the 90s. Ruiz retired after the bout. Of course, Hay called out the Klitsch Bros after the fight. We got a couple geezers here ready to throw down for a lesser title. Kinda takes me back to Foreman and Cooney 20 years before this. Kinda. Evander Holyfield met Francois Botha for the vacant WBF title. It was an 8th round TKO win for the real deal, and he was set on becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world again. He cited George Foreman as his inspiration. How about that? Evander has become where George was back in the 90s. How about that? Carrying over his dominance into the new decade is the WBC titleist Vitali Klitschko. Albert Sosnowski was gradually worn down by the champion before the big finish in the 10th. Dr. Iron Fist looks to be on his way to a mighty fine new decade. Was Tyson Fury lucky to get the nod the first time against John McDermott? It's up to you, but as far as the rematch goes, Fury left 0 doubt. McDermott was down once in the 8th and twice in the 9th. It was a TKO victory for Tyson Fury, who won all 4 of his bouts in 2010. This match was originally supposed to be Wladimir Klitschko and Alexander Povetkin's clash, but Povetkin's trainer Teddy Atlas didn't feel his fighter was ready, and instead Samuel Peters stepped in on July 29th. If you remember, back in 2005, Vlad and Sam had an awesome bout in which Dr. Steelhammer solidified that he was back on track. In hindsight, it was the night he showed he was here to stay in the main event. So here we go again 5 years later, but this will be a tale of a different fight than the first. Whereas Vlad was dropped 3 times the first time around, this time around, he battered the Nigerian Nightmare before the knockout in the 10th round. 9 consecutive title defenses, 13 consecutive victories dating back to the Lehman Brewster disappointment. What a champion. Peter would have an up and down rest of the decade, retiring in 2019. Let's go, champ! Shannon Briggs had been out of the game and had a chance encounter with Vitali Klitschko in a Los Angeles restaurant. It was there that Klitschko touched Briggs' fat belly and that Shannon had made up his mind to return. Did Dr. Iron Fist seal his own fate? Of course not. Klitschko completely dismantled Briggs by dishing him a stupendous beating. It was debated whether it should have been stopped sooner. To the Cannon's credit, he showed tremendous heart in the face of such a vastly superior foe, never going down or giving up. Briggs collapsed after the fight and was hospitalized with facial fractures and a torn bicep. He'd spend the rest of the decade trolling the other Klitschko. David Haye made his second title defense in an impressive showing against Audley Harrison, in which, get this, the challenger only landed one punch, maybe two depending on who you ask. Haye dropped this man in the third, he answered, and Haye launched an unanswered barrage that forced a TKO stoppage. Aight, we need Haye and Klitschko now. Either one, maybe both. In his sixth and final fight of the year, Deontay Wilder scored as many knockouts as he finished Dan Sheehan in the first round. Wilder has stopped every man he's faced, and I get the feeling that this pattern will continue. Who's next on Vitali Klitschko's plate? That would be Wladimir Solis, who you should remember from the 2000s. There was a bit of bad blood between the two, but it was squashed immediately by Dr. Iron Fist's right hand. Okay, that and the challenger's knee betraying him too. It was waved off as Solis returned to his feet and struggled to put any weight on his leg. He'd torn his ACL and his meniscus, and let me warn you, this isn't going to be the first time that a fight like this goes down because of a bad knee. On May 1st, special day for another reason, the boxing world lost Henry Cooper. He was a hero in the UK and should be remembered for championing England in the 50s and 60s, specifically when he dropped Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, with a hammer of a left hook. You can enjoy Cooper's career in my past timelines. Rest in peace, sir. Evander Holyfield, up against another relative geezer in Brian Nielsen, scored another victory. Despite some trouble in the 8th, the real deal bounced back to TKO Nielsen in the 10th. He said after that he was still gunning to be the heavyweight champion again. This wound up being his final bout, and he would officially announce his retirement over 3 years later on June 26, 2014. Thanks for everything, Evander. It was always exciting when you fought, champ. Well, David Haye, it's time to expose Dr. Stillhammer for the fraud you claim him to be. The bad blood was obvious and dated back to the previous decade. Haye had ascended from cruiserweight and slayed the giant Nikolai Valuev to claim the WBA strap. Wladimir Klitschko had battled from the brink of extinction to become the best heavyweight in the world. Haye had signed to fight both Klitschbros beforehand but backed out each time. Vlad wouldn't forget this, nor would he forget any of the trash talk. This included Haye saying Vlad was a cherry picker and that Vlad wore shoulder pads in his robe to appear more imposing. When the going gets tough, Vlad gets going to the canvas, at least according to the Haymaker. Coming into this bout, David Haye sparred with 6'8" David Price in preparation to conquer another giant. Those fluent with the sport may recognize David Price as a stick in Tyson Fury's side, but that's another story. Back to Haye. He was the number 2 contender. Who was number 1? Vitali Klitschko, of course, but we know the brothers will never fight. They promised their mom, after all. Dr. Stillhammer came into the fight seeking his 50th knockout, but he'd have to settle for a unanimous decision win. Despite Haye's taunt regarding Vlad hitting the canvas, it was actually Haye himself who went down, though they were ruled slips or pushes. Vlad did well to remain composed when Haye did land, and overall controlled the action as Haye remained cautious. Haye opened up a bit more in the final round, but too little too late. Wladimir Klitschko remains the best heavyweight in the world. And with this win, did Vlad also become the WBA Super Champion? It's the big brawl to settle it all. Well, at least for the UK. Tyson Fury seeks to snatch the Commonwealth and British heavyweight titles from Derek Chisora. Both men are undefeated at 14-0. Outside of an exciting rush in the second round in favor of Chisora, Fury outboxed his man to secure the titles and establish himself as the new face of Britain's heavyweight aspirations. Dr. Stillhammer's victory over David Haye upgraded him to the WBA Super Champion. Thus, Ruslan Chagaev and Alexander Povetkin are up to crown a regular champion. My goodness, how pointless. Anyway, Povetkin scored a decision win to claim the honor. if you can call it that. The WBA isn't helping its credibility, but it is what it is. WBC champion Vitali Klitschko is defending his title in the challenger's backyard. Tomasz Adamek struggled to get anything going against Dr. Iron Fist, and it was another dominant one-sided showing for the champion. The stoppage came in the 10th and probably could have come sooner. Now 40 years old, Klitschko was expected to hang up the gloves soon. A devastating loss came with the passing of Smokin' Joe Frazier. If you've watched this far chronologically in my series, you're already familiar with the greatness of this warrior. Perhaps the best left hook in the history of the sport and a true man's man competing in a world of relative giants that included Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. If you need to familiarize yourself with Joe Frazier, check out my 60s and 70s timelines. Rest in peace, sir. Canadian heavyweight champ Nevin Pajkic stands in the way of Britain's Tyson Fury. In round 2, Pajkic proved not to be ignored when he dropped the Gypsy King. Fury answered, and Pajkic remained aggressive up until Tyson turned it around in the 3rd and returned the favor with a knockdown. And another. And Pajkic answered both, but met his end at an arguably early stoppage when Fury appeared to be on his way to dropping him for a 3rd time. Very exciting fight. Afterward, Fury would vacate his titles as opposed to fighting mandatory David Price. 6 more fights for Deontay Wilder's resume conclude with this first round knockout of David Long. Wilder worked behind his jab almost exclusively, and when he finally did release his right hand, it ended the night. Carry on. Who will claim the vacant BBB of C heavyweight title? David Price or John McDermott? David Price, and quite forcefully at that. 3 knockdowns in the first round brought the reins of victory to Price. The winner of this fight was promised a match with Tyson Fury. Spoiler, it ain't happening.
Dr. Iron Fist, Vitali.
Wherever Derek Chisora goes, entertaining controversy follows. He slapped Vitali, and he spit in Vladimir's face. There's going to be hell to pay for that, I can imagine. Well, not as I imagined. Dr. Iron Fist scored the unanimous decision win, but not without enduring what may have been his most challenging bout since the Lennox Lewis War. Chisora showed heart and determination, proving he wasn't a mere hothead. You know Chisora is 10 toes down too, because he got into a brawl with David Haye in the ring after, and this led into their own bout later in 2012. The champ is back for a run of 3 here in 2012. Up first, Jean-Marc the Marksman Mormet out of France. They were supposed to fight in December, but Vlad had kidney stones. Here's a few stats for the challenger. He'd been inactive for 15 months. He had only 3 fights in the past 5 years, and it was only his 4th time fighting as a heavyweight as opposed to his usual being a cruiserweight. In fact, he was a former Ring Magazine WBC WBA cruiserweight champion. Vlad made peanuts of his man in 4 rounds and secured that notable 50th knockout. David Price proved impressive again against Sam Sexton. Sexton was down once in the 3rd and twice in the 4th. That last knockdown yielded the knockout. David Price now holds the BBB of C and Commonwealth titles. After winning the Irish heavyweight title 3 months earlier, Tyson Fury took another step toward the world level by stopping Vinny Matalone in 5 rounds. It was all Tyson Fury, as he had his way and peppered Matalone, increasing the beating as the rounds progressed. Light work. Can Wladimir Klitschko do Tony Thompson in again like he did back in 2008? He sure can, and in almost half the time. Tony the Tiger, we still love Frosted Flakes by the way, suffered just the 2nd knockout loss of his career. Both were to Dr. Stillhammer, no shame in that. It's also worth noting that Thompson received this title shot by default due to Eddie Chambers suffering a spinal injury and backing out of a contendership battle. Tony hadn't fought in 13 months. It's time for that grudge match I mentioned. Let's hope that brawl wasn't the peak of what these two can do. Derek Chisora applied the pressure, and David Haye scored by taking advantage of said pressure. Haye was rocked in the third, but recovered to drop Chisora for the first time in his career in the fifth. Derek answered, but was dropped again and waved off even though he stood up. It was a TKO win for the Haymaker, and the two had earned one another's respect. Let's peep in on the future of our division. At heavyweight, Alexander Usyk brought the gold home to Ukraine. He would turn pro in 2013, entering the cruiserweight ranks. At super heavyweight, Britain's own Anthony Joshua would bring home the gold and turn pro the next year in July. He overcame a bracket that included Dominic. Get the feeling that the names Usyk and Joshua. Not going to cover the 2016 Olympics because the participants won't have any bearings on the pro division. Well, other than Filip Hrgović and Joe Joyce. Don't say I didn't warn you. It's the final curtain call made apparent by the champion. Vitali Klitschko dominated Manuel Charr from the beginning all the way to the doctor's stoppage of the fight. Charr was down in the second. Dr. Iron Fist was more occupied with the politics of his home country than anything boxing in the fight's aftermath. We'll see if it's truly the final curtain call or not, somewhere down the line. The regular WBA titleist, Alexander Povetkin, must face former champion Hasim Rahman. It was a mismatch, and a bad one. Povetkin overwhelmed Rahman in the second round, forcing the stoppage in the ropes. Rahman's corner appeared ready to step in had the referee not stopped the fight. Povetkin had made 2 defenses before this and would make another after before a huge, overdue fight in 2013.
David Price knocked out Audley Harrison in 82 seconds.
I'll fight David Price any day of the week. It's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot. Okay, all right.
Huge loss for the world of boxing. We lost the great Emanuel Stewart, a man who turned fighters into champions. He transformed Tommy Hearns from a feather fist into the hitman, Lennox Lewis from a one-trick right-handed pony into the pugilist specialist, Wladimir Klitschko from the inconsistent, questionable ball of potential into the super champion of a decade. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This man was born to mold fighters and belongs in the conversation with the likes of Eddie Futch and Cus D'Amato. May he rest in peace, and may the Kronk Jimin style live on. Mariusz Schwarz, the last of Vlad's challengers this year, is the first opponent since Jamil McCline to eclipse the champion in size. He's taller, heavier, and has a longer reach. Will it matter? Well, yes and no. Vlad dominated the cards and put on a landslide in the aftermath of the loss of the legendary Emanuel Stewart. It was his 13th title defense. On the other end, Watch was viewed favorably for enduring the best of the champion and making it to the final bell. What's really left for Vlad at this point? I guess he can keep adding to his legacy, but he's got nothing left to really prove. Like a shark, patiently stalking his prey, Deontay Wilder caught up to Kelvin Price in the third round with his famous right hand and ended their bout in an instant. Wilder has a knack for ending our years with a bang. Seven-1 betting underdog Tony Thompson pulled off quite the upset after acknowledging that this was his last chance. David Price was undefeated.
It's exciting times in this heavyweight division. Oh, goodness!
Yeah, was. In the second round, Thompson landed a right that put Price down. He answered, but was waved off. It was a notable turnaround for the 41-year-old Tony Thompson. Looks like he still got that tiger in him. In Tyson Fury's American debut, he matched up with Steve Cunningham. Fury tasted the canvas in the second, once again at the hands of an overhand right. Is a blueprint being laid here akin to the left hook jinx of Muhammad Ali? We'll have to wait and see. Fury bounced back and scored the knockout in round 7, once again showing his ability to weather a storm. And it was a nasty knockout at that, the first of Cunningham's career. The win also made Tyson Fury the number 2 contender for Wladimir Klitschko's IBF title. Against perhaps the first notable enough name for his resume, Deontay Wilder once again ended the night with the first throwing of his right hand.
There's the right hand.
Okay, a further barrage, give or take. Oddly, Harrison didn't stand a chance, past sparring partner or not. Harrison retired 4 days later. It took all of 6 rounds for Wladimir Klitschko to stop Francesco Pianeta behind 2 knockdowns that came in the 4th and 5th respectively. Pianeta, a cancer survivor, was previously unbeaten in the ring and disappointed in his performance, despite Klitschko giving him his due. Was it a fluke punch?
He's not doing enough with his hands. He's hardly defending himself, and the referee steps in.
No, it wasn't. David Price's chance at redemption appeared fulfilled when Tony Thompson went down in the second, but the Tiger rose and endured enough to where Price punched himself out. That, combined with body shots that took the wind out of the younger man, led to a 5th round TKO. Price was defenseless, and Thompson was the winner again. I sure hope Thompson's wife is okay after that post-fight interview promise, too.
I'm going to go home and break my wife's hip. She might be crippled in the morning. She's going to feel the pain. If anybody out there want to donate a wheelchair.
In his first notable victory, Andy Ruiz Jr. captured the WBO Intercontinental title when he finished Joe Hanks in the 4th round. The catch now, isn't it? Next up for Deontay Wilder is former WBO title holder Sergey Liakovich. Same-ish, different day, as Wilder's right hand ruined his man and sent him down. Liakovich twitched and remained down after the fight was waved off. It's 29 straight knockouts. Wilder originally sought to fight Derek Chisora, but a domestic assault arrest for Deontay led to that falling through. Too bad. That would have been a show. Making his professional debut is that 2012 super heavyweight Olympic gold medalist, Anthony Joshua. He's up against Emanuele Leo. AJ practiced his shots to perfection as he peppered his man before securing the stoppage, as Leo crashed to the canvas. That's a promising start, young buck. AJ would win twice more in 2013, both second-round TKOs. Let's go peep on the champ in Russia here, on the very same day. Let's settle this. Who's the rightful holder of the WBA's claim? Regular champ Alexander Povetkin or super champ Wladimir Klitschko? Their previous 2 would-be encounters fell through, largely to the fault of Povetkin. As for the fight, it was ugly. Vlad was chastised for his excessive holding and admitted his own disappointment at such. Still, Klitschko managed to drop Povetkin in the 2nd and 3 more times in the 7th. It was the first time Povetkin had been down in his career. It was a unanimous decision victory for Dr. Steelhammer. Shoulder surgery for David Haye has nixed a planned February 8th bout with rising contender Tyson Fury. It's the 2nd time, too. The first delay was due to a cut back in September. It's unfortunate, but hopefully they can get it on down the line. Spoiler, they won't. So I have to ask you, who would have won? Choosing to focus on the politics of his home, Vitali Klitschko announced his retirement from professional boxing. He was once again granted champion emeritus status, but openly stated he couldn't imagine coming back. The WBC title, which he defended 9 consecutive times, was vacated. Dr. Iron Fist walked away with a record of 45 victories, 2 defeats, with 41 knockouts. The division was left in the more than capable hands of his brother Wladimir, who still hopefully will seek unification. Deontay Wilder knocked out Malik Scott, straight and to the point. Not too significant beyond being a WBC title eliminator, but more so because the names Deontay Wilder and Malik Scott will make a lot more sense to you once we reach 2021. Alex Leapai was the first Australian to challenge for the heavyweight crown in over a century. The last, Bill Squires, who challenged Tommy Burns way back in 1908. Wladimir Klitschko dropped his man once in the first and twice more in the fifth before securing the stoppage win. AJ, we meet again. The youngster has been fairly active, remaining undefeated in 8 fights.
Up to this, but he is getting pounded, and Anderson Lewis did absolutely the right thing.
You better make it 9. Joshua, despite defiance from Denis Bogtov, who had a bad cut, stopped his man in 2 rounds. Wait, did he? Yep, he did. Referee Ian John Lewis confused us all for a second there. The win made AJ the WBC International Champ. Kubrat Pulev, confident or arrogant? Well, let's see. Before the fight against Wladimir Klitschko, Pulev said that Vlad has everything needed to be a world champion, but that he lacks heart and he's like a girl. Talk about a backhanded compliment. Now, I don't think Dr. Steelhammer liked it either, because he dropped the challenger 4 times. Twice in the first, once in the third, and the final time in the 5th. The last one was a devastating left hook that scored the knockout. After the fight, Klitschko said that he'd never seen such arrogance and that Pulev must not have realized he was fighting in the Champions League. Pulev stood 10 toes down after the fight, and he said that he thought Vlad got lucky and that he'd win a rematch. Maybe that's the concussion talking. The victory tied Wladimir with Joe Louis for overall opponents beaten for the heavyweight title at 22. It's bad blood as Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora meet again. Things were different this time, as Fury had noticeably advanced since their last meeting. Chisora struggled against Fury's size and had to be warned for hitting below the belt. After enduring speedy punches and excellent distance fighting behind the switch of stances between orthodox and southpaw, Chisora's corner saw enough and called it at the end of the 10th. Fury called out Wladimir Klitschko after. In the first fight in the MGM Grand since 1997's Bite Fight, Romain Stavern made the first defense of his WBC title against the untested yet deadly Deontay Wilder. It would be Wilder's first time being taken the distance, as Stavern made it to the final bell of 12 rounds, but not without having to part ways with his title. Deontay Wilder won every round and outvolumed the champ. Afterward, Wilder said he wanted Tyson Fury next before a unification affair with Wladimir Klitschko. He's bold, but there are some obstacles in the way of that. We'll have to wait and see. Deontay Wilder is the first American to hold a portion of the heavyweight crown since Shannon Briggs' last decade, and he did this on Muhammad Ali's 73rd birthday. Oh, and before we move on here too, if you're wondering how Stavern captured the WBC title in the aftermath of Vitali Klitschko, he beat Chris Arreola for it with a 6-round TKO, and it made him the first ever Haitian-born fighter to capture a portion of the heavyweight crown. One last fight before challenging for the big one. It's Tyson Fury versus Christian Hammer, and it ended when Hammer failed to come out for the 9th round. Fury dropped his man in the 5th and looked to be on his way toward the opportunity of a lifetime. One problem: Tyson tested positive for a banned substance afterward. This wasn't revealed, however, for 7 months and a full month after the match with Wladimir Klitschko. Something fishy here? You decide. Fighting in the United States for the first time since 2008, Wladimir Klitschko made history with a unanimous decision win over unbeaten Bryant Jennings. Klitschko did a lot of holding and was reprimanded for such, even losing a point. Overall, he didn't look his best, and maybe Father Time is catching up? At 39 years old, Wladimir Klitschko broke Joe Louis's 67-year-old record of opponents beaten for the World Heavyweight Championship with 23. He also broke the record for victories and unified title bouts with 15, passing Jose Napoles and Muhammad Ali. Is it time to hang him up? Not according to Vlad. He said a while back that he wanted at least another decade as champ. We'll see. Kevin Johnson had once gone 12 rounds with Vitali Klitschko, but this bout against Anthony Joshua will show that he was a shell of that fighter. Joshua completely outclassed Johnson unlike any other fighter had done so. Should the division be on notice for the rising AJ? You decide. For the first time since August 12, 2006, a heavyweight title bout features an All-American cast. WBC titleist Deontay Wilder met a decent challenge in Eric Molina, who managed to win 2 rounds to his credit. But outside of that, Wilder dropped Molina in the 4th, twice in the 5th, and for the knockout in the 9th. This was the first heavyweight title bout held in Alabama, Wilder's home state, and also home to past greats like Evander Holyfield and Joe Louis. On the undercard of the Commonwealth title bout, Dillian Whyte faced Brian Minto. The body snatcher dropped Minto in the 1st and knocked him out in the 3rd. AJ climbed to 14-0 and captured the vacant Commonwealth Boxing Council title with a first-round TKO of Gary Cornish. It wasn't even close. Get this man some competition. For a second title defense, Deontay Wilder is back against the durable Johann Duhaupas. It was a buffet of brain damage with a little showmanship here and there as Wilder grew more confident. The end came in the 11th when the referee called the action as Duhaupas absorbed a terrible beating without any resistance. What a year it was for the Bronze Bomber. Congrats. You know you've been waiting for this one. There's always a bigger fish. Wladimir Klitschko and Tyson Fury had a silent history. I'm mainly referencing how Fury had built this all up in his mind en route to an inevitable clash with Vlad. That's right. I'm talking about the showdown in the sauna and how Vlad got out before Tyson did. If you've watched the face-off between the two, which you should if you haven't by the way, you'll see something uncommon. Fury became the first man to legitimately get into Klitschko's head and rattle him. That's no easy feat. Fury pulled off some other hijinks too, like dressing up as Batman for a press conference and saying that Klitschko was going to get licked. That's the only way I can put that for you here without getting punished by YouTube, but those who know what Fury actually said there, and it was hilarious. On fight night, the 6'9" challenger completed the bamboozle by outboxing and outclinching the champion. He had Vlad's number and beat him at his own game. Without the size advantage he normally held, Vlad found himself unable to counter or even land. Add to that how slippery and sound Fury was, and it was just destined to come to an end for Dr. Steelhammer. It was the upset of the year. Tyson Fury is the new unified lineal ring WBA, IBF, WBO heavyweight champion of the world, and he won Fighter of the Year, the only heavyweight to do so in this entire decade. Klitschko, of course, wants his rematch. After a fiery build-up, Anthony Joshua met Dillian Whyte to settle the score. I asked for some competition in favor of AJ, and Whyte, to his credit, provided that. He made it to the 7th against AJ before he was laid out like a picnic spread. That uppercut, I never get enough of watching it, and Whyte crashing down the way he did on the ropes. Man, I don't know what it is with Whyte, but when he gets dropped, he has an almost video game-like ragdoll effect. It's entertaining. AJ added the British heavyweight title to his collection, but would vacate it along with his other 2 belts in favor of bigger things next year. Tyson Fury was stripped of the IBF title for not facing his mandatory. Thus, Charles Martin and Vyacheslav Glazkov are up to the plate. The first 2 rounds were tame, but the 3rd is where we found closure. Glazkov fell while throwing punches and hurt his knee. He further hurt his knee by throwing a body punch, and he went down after that. It was ruled a knockdown, and he somehow answered, but he couldn't continue. He'd completely torn his ACL, dislocated his knee, torn his medial meniscus, and sprained his MCL and LCL. Bro went through the whole knee alphabet. RIP. Charles Martin is the new IBF titleist. Glazkov retired. I don't think I can blame him after that, man. I had no knee left. Starting us strong in 2016, well, kind of if you don't include that last undercard bout, we got a WBC title defense by Deontay Wilder against Artur Szpilka. It was competitive enough to go 9 rounds, but everything came to a dead stop when Wilder landed the bomb. Szpilka went down like a sack of potatoes and was counted out flat on his back.
There's only one Tyson Fury.
I ain't scared of nobody. I'll come to your backyard, baby, for that, my man.
Anytime, any place, anywhere. I'll fight you in your back garden like a dumb Klitschko.
This is just an act, baby. You're not a real fighter. This is an act. I don't play this.
Bigger things have come, but is Anthony Joshua ready for the lights? Charles Martin had become IBF titleist at the hands of a bad knee injury, so we need to see if he's actually championship material. AJ's right hand would prove his downfall in the second round as he went down twice and failed to answer the count. Anthony Joshua is the new IBF champ and has aspirations to unify the division for the first time since Lennox Lewis did back in 1999. Good luck. A loss not only for the boxing world, but the world over, as one of the most impactful and beloved humans ever passed on. Muhammad Ali's boxing career is to behold, and you can do just that in my 60s and 70s timelines, or in my documentary completely dedicated to his career from 1960 to 1981. Take your pick. I still remember where I was on this day back in 2016. I was in my bed staring at the roof. Rest in peace, champ. Alright, AJ. Let's see if that dream of unifying the division has any merit. Can he defend his newly won title? He sure can. Dominic Breazeale struggled to get anything going against Joshua and took a beating for the majority of 7 rounds. In the 7th, he was dropped and answered before being overwhelmed and dropped again. The action was called to a halt and AJ had his first title defense. It's been 2 years since Chris Arreola fell to Bermane Stiverne in his quest for WBC gold. He's got a shot again against the Bronze Bomber. In the 4th, Wilder got to his man with a knockdown, to which Arreola answered. The challenger accumulated enough punishment for an additional 4 rounds, though, that ultimately led to him not answering the bell for the 9th. It was over, and Deontay Wilder had his 4th title defense. Wilder said after that he had a torn muscle and had a broken right hand. Undefeated young Joseph Parker made a point in a dominant showing over Alexander Dimitrenko. Parker dropped his man in the 1st, twice in the 2nd, and knocked him out in the 3rd. However, Parker hit Dimitrenko while he was down on one knee, which some felt should have led to a disqualification. Should it have? You choose. On June 26, Tyson Fury tested positive for a banned substance. On September 23rd, Fury once again postponed his rematch with Wladimir Klitschko, being declared medically unfit. Well, it's over today. Fury has officially vacated his WBA and WBO titles to focus on rehabbing his life. Ring Magazine continued to recognize him as champion. Get well soon, champ. Well, we're finally going to crown another title holder in the aftermath of Tyson Fury's collapse. Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz Jr. met to find a new WBO champ. Parker would emerge with a majority decision in his homeland and enter his name into history as New Zealand's first heavyweight champion.
Listen, I am the baddest man.
On the undercard of the IBF title bout, Dillian Whyte met the man who'd thrown a table at him for threatening him, the always exciting and unpredictable Derek Chisora. The two put on a hell of a fight that drew praise for its action and the willpower of both men. A fight that turned back the clocks to the more exciting times of the division. From the 5th round on, it was fire as Chisora wobbled Whyte. Chisora found himself staggered in the 10th. How either man avoided going down is a testament to this marvel. Whyte was given a decision, but many felt Chisora had earned the nod. What do you think? IBF champ Anthony Joshua is back again. Not much to write home about in the first 2 rounds, but Eric Molina would meet his end in the 3rd. AJ turned up the heat and dropped his man. Molina answered, and he was swarmed, forcing the stoppage. Dare I make this request again? Okay, I will. Get this man AJ some proper competition. We got a sleeper banger on our hands and on the Wilder-Washington undercard. Dominic Breazeale and Izu Ugano started the fireworks in the third when Breazeale dropped his man. In the fourth, Ugano returned the favor with some monster right hands. Dominic recovered and executed his will in the fifth with a knockdown and later a knockout that sent his man through the ropes. The third round was named Round of the Year. WBC titleist Deontay Wilder's original opponent failed a drug test and was replaced by Gerald Washington on a mere 2 days' notice, or at least that's when the contract was signed. The Bronze Bomber, sporting a new hairstyle for the first time he'd go on to be known for, broke through in the fifth when he dropped Washington. The challenger answered and met one of those infamous Wilder storms where he loses control to the point that even the referee can't stop him. Either way, it was over. Make it 5 title defenses for Wilder. As per usual with David Haye, he and Tony Bellew had beef and wanted to rip one another's heads off. It was a good enough bout up until the 6th round where the Haymaker ruptured his Achilles tendon. In a warrior-like feat, he opted to continue. Look, I'm not sure if you, the viewer, realize this, but even standing on a ruptured Achilles is hell on earth. So give it up for David Haye here. No, seriously, you're watching this video, start clapping right now. Give him a little round of applause. I don't care where you are. Kobe Bryant shot 2 free throws on a torn Achilles, and David Haye fought 5 more rounds on one. Bellew knocked Haye through the ropes, and Haye defied the odds and answered, but his corner threw in the towel. No shame here in my opinion, and Haye even refused to blame his injury for the loss, crediting Bellew for being the better fighter. Haye underwent surgery and sought a rematch after his recovery. In his pro debut, Daniel Dubois stopped Marcus Kelly in 35 seconds. Dubois will be a prominent face in the next decade, but I wanted you to see how he started. Dynamite, indeed. Well, we got AJ some competition. It's like every time I ask for it, it happens. With a Tyson Fury rematch lost, the old lion Wladimir Klitschko found himself the front runner for a bout against the new IBF title holder and rising young lion, Anthony Joshua. Other complications aside that of course had to do with the WBA, the two lions finally signed to fight for a projected April date. It was indeed a war between the past and the present, as Joshua and Klitschko put on a timeless affair. The heart and will of both gladiators was on full display, notable for Vlad in particular, because there was a time when his heart was on trial. After a cautious 4 rounds, AJ finally got to Vlad in the 5th, and he dropped him. Dr. Steelhammer answered and held his own before returning the favor in the 6th. The stalemate returned until the 11th, where AJ regained himself and dropped Vlad. Again, the old lion answered, but the young lion pounced and knocked Vlad down again. That old lion refuses to give up his kingdom. Never mind how he survived that uppercut from hell either. Vlad got up again, but was overwhelmed on the ropes, and the fight was stopped. They fought the fight of the year, the only time in the decade that the heavyweights won the honor. With the exit of Tyson Fury, who AJ called out directly after the fight, by the way, it appears that Anthony Joshua has become the new king of the jungle. Unless Deontay Wilder would like to chime in, this wound up being the final fight in the illustrious career of Wladimir Klitschko, who would announce his retirement on August 3rd. What a champion. And what an exit, going out on his shield like the all-time great he is. Oh, and just to clarify, no, AJ is not the lineal heavyweight champion. This was a big deal at the time because of the state of Tyson Fury. I repeat, Joshua is not the lineal champion. Joseph Parker's first WBO title defense is up and against Romania's Razvan Kojanu. It was originally supposed to be Hughie Fury, but he backed out due to a back injury. Parker retained by unanimous decision, but he would have preferred to knock his man out. His peers agreed and chastised him for failing to do so, claiming they would knock Parker out. One of these detractors was Dillian Whyte. Remember that. Aight, Joseph Parker's back again. That's a back-to-back to defend his WBO title, and hopefully he can bring the boom this time. Hughie Fury is in place to get the shot he missed out on. Parker retained, again by a decision. The champ remained cautious for the first half of the fight, but upped his output in the latter half and finished strong. And yes, in case you're wondering, Hughie Fury is related to Tyson Fury. They're first cousins. Carlos Takam stepped in for an injured Kubrat Pulev to face unified champion Anthony Joshua. For a replacement, Takam did well. In the second, a headbutt left AJ with a bloody nose and a renewed sense of urgency. Joshua cut and dropped the challenger in the fourth as the action revved up. In the seventh, Takam was cut over his other eye. There were a couple points in which Takam had to be examined by the ringside doctor for his cuts, and he was allowed to continue. In the 10th, AJ landed a good string of blows and the bout was stopped. Joshua was vocal in his frustration over not being able to knock Takam out and credited the challenger. With this stoppage, AJ surpassed the record of 19 consecutive knockouts held by Mike Tyson. That's quite the bar. Onwards and upwards. I hope you're ready for a show. The gap between Deontay Wilder and Bermane Stiverne since their last showdown, in which Stiverne went the distance, is about to be apparent. Wilder seemed to be toying with Stiverne this time around and made mincemeat of the challenger, literally folding him like a lawn chair. Have you ever seen a boxer reach into his bag and execute a basketball move for a knockout? I kid you not, the Bronze Bomber Euro stepped into the knockout that folded Stiverne. There were 3 knockdowns. With this win, Wilder had reclaimed the honor of having stopped every man he faced. He also called out unified champion Anthony Joshua in the aftermath. Luis Ortiz was a high-risk, low-reward. In other words, fighters were less inclined to face him. Deontay Wilder was down to fight him in 2017, but the arrangement was ruined when Ortiz failed a drug test and the Stiverne rematch went through instead. Thankfully, it was only a pushback, and here we are. 2 dangerous, undefeated heavyweights, but who's the alpha? Luis Ortiz would pose the greatest challenge and threat to Wilder's reign so far. He had the champ in trouble and won his fair share of the fight, but he met the grandest opposition of his own career as well. Ortiz tasted the canvas in the 5th after getting the better of the first 4 rounds. In round 7, Ortiz had Wilder in the most trouble the champion had ever been in. Round 10 saw Wilder break through and drop the challenger again. Ortiz answered and was overwhelmed to the canvas again, where the fight was waved off. Very entertaining and by far Wilder's best title defense so far. This is why we love when the best fight the best. On the Joshua Parker undercard, Alexander Povetkin met David Price. The 3rd round was one of those joints fight fans adore. Povetkin dropped Price and Price answered to send Povetkin across the ring from a left hook. When the dust settled in the 5th, Povetkin dropped Price again, and it was over by TKO. The road to undisputed roars onward. Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker are set to bring together the WBA, IBF, and WBO titles. Parker would go down as the first man to take AJ the distance. There were 2 accidental clashes of the head. An accidental elbow cut Parker, and AJ's glove wound up needing to be retaped. Pretty rugged affair that may have been marred by the referee breaking up the action anytime the fighters got close. This being because Parker is most effective on the inside. AJ convincingly won the cards and became the new unified WBA, IBF, WBO heavyweight champion. However, Joseph Parker had stalled AJ's 20-fight knockout streak and swore he would be back and better down the line. For some reason, I believe him. He fought on like a warrior and went out like a gladiator. Now he has his rematch. Will David Haye avenge himself, or will Tony Bellew double down? This time around, Haye started well in the 2 rounds, but was caught and dropped in the 3rd. He answered and was dropped again. Haye went down again in the 5th, but once again answered. He rose to a barrage from Bellew and the fight was stopped. Tony Bellew had doubled down, and David Haye once again congratulated his conqueror. He's back. After a battle against boxing authorities and the defeating of his own demons, lineal heavyweight champion Tyson Fury returned to the ring against Sefer Seferi. Naturally, the lineage is on the line, but what happened to the Ring magazine recognition? Fury failed to declare an opponent by January 31st of 2018 and was thus stripped. As for the bout, Fury showboated and got the better of the action. Seferi quit on his stool after round 4 and the Gypsy King was back. The goal is to get him in the ring with Deontay Wilder. Let's hope that's sooner rather than later. Fury would defeat Francesco Pianeta 2 months later to once again retain the lineage. At the age of 37, David Haye announced via social media that he was hanging up the gloves. He walked away a 2-division world champion and a giant slayer of sorts. Thanks for the memories and the haymakers. Only in the best fights do both competitors have to overcome adversity. Welcome to one such bout. Dillian Whyte brought the heat to start and dropped Joseph Parker for the first time in his career. Wait, that was a headbutt. Too late, it's been ruled a knockdown. As the fight went on, Whyte tired and Parker closed the gap. In the 9th, a left hook dropped Parker again, this one legit. He rose and took control of the fight as it grinded toward the end, dropping Whyte in the final round. Whyte rose and survived to secure the unanimous decision. Safe to say, these two need to fight again, and as am I producing this documentary in the fall or autumn of 2025, they haven't. This is in spite of Parker having called out Whyte in a creative fashion. Joseph Parker has lost twice in a row, but he made a good showing of himself both times. Reminds me of Joe Bugner's 1973 against Ali and Frazier. I'm proud to say Joseph Parker's upside is apparent because he's only gotten better since 2018. AJ is back and up against a solid contender and ex-title holder Alexander Povetkin, who'd earned this shot by beating David Price on the undercarder Joshua Parker. Povetkin managed to rock the champion near the end of the first with a solid combination that bloodied AJ's nose. Joshua upped his effort, but Povetkin stuck with what was working for him. In the 7th, AJ broke through when he rocked Povetkin and followed up by dropping the challenger. Povetkin answered and was overwhelmed by the champ, forcing the stoppage as the challenger crashed down again. AJ retains, and negotiations for a Deontay Wilder unification bout remain in the air. Joshua called Wilder out after the fact, but little did everyone know that 24 hours beforehand, Wilder had signed to fight lineal champion Tyson Fury, so a unification bout is happening, just not the one we expected.
One punch Palmer!
You're a bum from Alabama who's getting knocked out. You and your alter ego are a pack of bums.
The journey back to the top could reach a benchmark here for Tyson Fury. We've been waiting for these bulls to lock horns for about 3 years now. We're also still waiting to see Anthony Joshua, whether he'll join the mix. There's a 3-headed monster in the heavyweight division, and we want to see who the best is. Tonight, we take our first step toward knowing. The Gypsy King looked to be in top form as he was slippery and jerky to the point of being near impossible to time and hit. I did say near impossible for a reason, because Wilder did get that famous right hand in there for a knockdown in the 9th. The story of the fight came in the final round, though. when Wilder landed a devastating combo that floored Fury, who appeared to be out on his back as the Bronze Bomber celebrated. Like the Undertaker, Fury rose from the dead and went on to win the remainder of the round. Something clicked in Fury's head after that knockdown, but more on that when we get to 2020. Tyson Fury's resurrection live in 4K was eerily reminiscent of Larry Holmes and how he survived Ernie Shavers back in 1979. The 12th was named Round of the Year. At the final bell, the fight was called a split decision draw, much to the disappointment of the boxing world. Both men retained their titles, but the general consensus was that Fury had done enough to win. I remember sitting in my apartment with my college buds at the time, and we all had Fury winning it and were shocked to hear the call of the draw. The good news? A rematch was certain.
It's a bit of a weird analogy.
How'd you beat this man?
Have you ever taken those pills, the laxative pills? You know, the ones you take, you pop. I'm gonna go through this, man.
Do these two have any chance of putting on a classic like 2 years before? Sure, depending on how you look at it. This time, Chisora was more apparent with dictating the pace and scoring. Chisora was so aggressive that he was deducted a point twice. They exchanged, and Chisora got the better until it all came crashing down in the 11th. White connected with a knockout securing left hook, and it was over. Chisora was ahead on 2 of the judges' cards. Afterward, White said he wanted Anthony Joshua again. AJ, who was present, agreed if the Wilder unification bout didn't happen. As of the fall or autumn of 2025, AJ and White's rematch still hasn't happened. It was supposed to happen in 2024, but White failed a drug test. Who would you have favored in 2024? And before we move on, I'm just going to get this out of the way. Dillian Whyte went on to win the interim WBC title in 2019, but he lost recognition after failing a drug test. My goodness. Back in action and perhaps with a chip on his shoulder is the Bronze Bomber. I'll skip to the chase and tell you that Dominic Breazeale felt the wrath of the WBC champ with a masterful right hand that ended the night in the opening round. That knockout should lend further credibility to Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. They're the two best the division has to offer. Well, them and AJ. Let's not forget it was AJ who first beat Dominic. Speaking of which, it's about time Joshua fought again. The train roars on as Anthony Joshua is looking for a matchup since Deontay Wilder has chosen to rematch Tyson Fury. Originally, Dillian Whyte was up, but the honor fell to Jarrell Miller. When Miller failed multiple drug tests, AJ needed a new opponent and Andy Ruiz Jr. would step in on 1 month's notice. Ruiz had failed to capture a heavyweight title against Joseph Parker and never gotten a rematch. Well, funny how things work out. He's a 25-1 underdog against AJ, and wouldn't you know it, this was a firefight and Joshua may have met his match. AJ dropped his man in the third, and for the first time, a challenger rose, unafraid of AJ's power, and brought the action. Despite it being Ruiz's first time down, he returned the favor shortly after by dishing AJ his first knockdown since the Wladimir Klitschko war. Joshua looked stunned and staggered, completely flabbergasted at this side of the equation despite his experience. Ruiz would force a mandatory 8 count on AJ before the conclusion of the third. The third was named Round of the Year. The action staggered until the 7th where Joshua was failed again. He answered again and engaged the challenger, but was dropped again. AJ answered, but spat out his mouthpiece, walked to his corner, and appeared to be mentally disengaged. He was waved off, and in the upset of the year, Andy Ruiz Jr. was the new unified WBA, IBF, WBO heavyweight champion. The first Mexican-American heavyweight champ and only the second Hispanic heavyweight champ. One of the biggest upsets in boxing history. I remember not even bothering to watch this match as I was so sure AJ had it in the bag as we waited for him to face the winner of Fury Wilder. You can imagine my surprise when I checked Instagram and AJ was a beaten man. I was blown away. For those who know or don't, AJ would never truly be the same, and I personally pinpoint that shot to the temple in the third for knocking the lion out of Joshua. Also, fat guys are really flipping boxing on its head. Fury and Ruiz look like they have no business being even competitive. Yet here we are. Well, Fury Wilder turned out to be quite the tease. The Gypsy King is back against Tom Schwartz, and you're in for a show. It all looks good. He says he wants one more fight before chasing Wilder for the highly anticipated rematch. Do you like scares? Now, I'm sure Tyson Fury doesn't, especially after he survived a devastating cut to outpoint Otto Wallin. Should the fight have been stopped due to the cuts? You decide. Bit of a scare, but the Wilder rematch should be next. Despite Derek Chisora and David Price coming up together in the fight ranks, Chisora assured his friend that it was war come fight night. The action rose in the third when Chisora came forward but was met by a Price uppercut. In the fourth, Chisora came with the heat and landed enough shots on the inside to drop Price. He answered, but his corner threw in the towel. Price would announce his retirement 2 years later after remaining inactive. Faced with the options of a rematch with Tyson Fury or an undisputed affair with Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder chose a rematch, but with Luis Ortiz. In hindsight, he may have wished he'd chosen the AJ unification given how Andy Ruiz had bounced Joshua off the canvas like a basketball. Anyway, it was expected that Ortiz would trouble Wilder again, and this was mostly true, but it all came crashing down in the seventh when Wilder scored the knockout. A perfect display of how one punch can change anything in the heavyweight division. Ortiz had clearly outboxed Wilder all night, and it was gone in a flash. That's 10 title defenses for the Bronze Bomber. Afterward, Wilder announced that Tyson Fury was next, and then he was on to unification, be it Anthony Joshua or Andy Ruiz Jr. Just as shocked as you were when Andy Ruiz Jr. defeated Anthony Joshua, you should be just as unsurprised that AJ's camp immediately exercised the rematch clause. This time around, Ruiz came in even fatter and clearly intoxicated with the success of winning the big one. AJ was sharp and dominated the fight from start to finish, choosing to box Ruiz and avoid any exchanges. Ruiz appeared frustrated and had no answer for the reinvigorated Joshua. It was a wide unanimous decision for Joshua and perhaps a sign that the first bout was a fluke. However, something newly apparent was that the formerly aggressive AJ has transformed into a boxer for this one. Is it fear or is it adaptability? We'll have to observe more in the 2020s. Congratulations to AJ for regaining his belts, and we'll see how his journey to unify the division pans out as we enter the next decade. I gotta say, that was way better than the 2000s. I think I'll name it the Renaissance Age. The 2010s gave birth to the heavyweight three-headed monster in Fury, Wilder, and Joshua. We actually got a fight between two of them too. Wladimir Klitschko passed on the torch by fighting two of them himself. Vitali retired in grace to go and do greater things. Whether the 2000s were so bad that they would easily be topped or whether this was actually just a good decade is up to you. I'd personally wager it was darn good, straight up. What was the best fight? Fury Wilder, Klitschko Joshua? Who you got? The heavyweight division appears to be back in form, and you can bet that the 2020s will continue the roll. There's some real bangers to come in the 2020s. Don't miss it. You know I'll be covering it. No, I won't be spoiling it with a preview fight as I usually do either. You'll have to wait for the timeline, but fear not. I won't make you wait until the tail end of 2029, 4 years from now. I'm going to do a 2020s heavyweight division so far type of video at the end of this year. So subscribe today and become a member for those perks you know you can't live without. I'll see you then. This has been the Charles Jackson, author of the Boxing Encyclopedia. Stay frosty, and God bless you.